In 1976, Andrew Lloyd Webber, a rising star in the opera world, drew inspiration from the life of Eva Perón, the First Lady of Argentina in the 1950s, to create a music album. One song from the album, Don't Cry for Me Argentina, captivated audiences with its poignant and melodious tune, and its memorable lyrics took it to the top of the UK singles chart. 2 years later, a musical based on the album, Evita, premiered in London's West End, and the following year it made its way to Broadway, where it enjoyed over 20 years of success. In 1995, the musical was adapted into a film starring pop icon Madonna. This South American First Lady, who did not receive much attention from the Western world during her lifetime, became a legend decades after her death. What kind of dramatic life story could continue to be sung about for so long? Today, let's talk about the story of Eva Perón. In 1919, Eva was born in a small town in Argentina, not far from the capital, Buenos Aires. She was the youngest of 5 children, with 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters. Her family was somewhat unusual. Her mother was her father's mistress, which meant that all 5 children were illegitimate. Extramarital affairs and illegitimate children were quite common at the time, but Eva's family's situation was particularly difficult. Under pressure from his wife, Eva's father abandoned them completely, providing only occasional financial support. When Eva was 6, her father died in a car accident, further worsening their already dire financial situation. Eva's mother took the 5 children to attend her father's funeral, but they were humiliated by his lawful family. This incident left a deep impression on young Eva. Many believe that Eva's relentless drive in her later battles stemmed from a desire for revenge against that family and that social class. In school, Eva was an unremarkable child, neither excelling academically nor seeking attention. She quickly grew disenchanted with her studies and dropped out after finishing elementary school. However, she still harbored ambitions of making a name for herself and escaping the small town she despised. At the time, Hollywood stars were all the rage across the country, so she naturally chose a different path and went to Buenos Aires to become an actress. At 16, she convinced her mother to move to the Argentine capital with her. Eva was petite and frail, standing only 1.55 meters tall, and seemed as if a gust of wind could knock her over due to prolonged malnutrition. Her features were delicate and her eyes always carried a hint of melancholy, but her voice was rough and deep, creating a stark contrast with her gentle appearance. In reality, she had no acting skills, and the dream of becoming a movie star was far-fetched given her circumstances. She played a few minor roles, mostly with little or no dialogue, and after several years, her acting career had made no progress. Colleagues who worked with her said she was unremarkable and sometimes had a bad temper. They never imagined she would later wield such influence. In those days, television did not yet exist, and the emerging media outside of films was radio. After encountering numerous obstacles in her acting career, Eva decided to pursue opportunities in radio. Though her voice was not pleasant, it was distinctive and recognizable. After her initial opportunity at a radio station, she dedicated significant effort to refining her voice and control. Gradually, the station noticed that her programs garnered decent ratings, and she began to have her weekly show, narrating the lives of famous women in history. She portrayed figures like Elizabeth I and Catherine the Great, captivating her audience. Eva herself greatly enjoyed this, thinking about how wonderful it would be to experience being a legendary woman. At that time, although she had gained some minor fame, she was still just an ordinary woman in Buenos Aires without any family background, connections to high society, or extraordinary talent. This dream seemed utterly unattainable. But fate can be quite miraculous at times, and Eva soon encountered an unexpected turning point in her life. On January 22, 1944, an earthquake struck a remote city in Argentina, causing severe casualties and damage. The arts community joined forces with the political and business sectors to organize charity performances and fundraisers for disaster relief. As a somewhat well-known radio host, Eva attended one of these events. One of the important guests at that event was Colonel Juan Perón. Juan Perón was the Minister of Labor at the time and also the leading figure of the influential United Officers Group. After meeting at the fundraising event, the two quickly fell in love and began dating frequently. Juan, who was 49 years old at the time, was 24 years older than Eva. He was a widower, having lost his first wife, but he still had a live-in mistress when he met Eva. After meeting Eva, Juan swiftly ended his previous relationship, and Eva became his new mistress. The term mistress is quite intriguing. At that time, the concept of a girlfriend did not exist in high society. Women who were dating with the intention of marriage were called fiancées. Given Eva's background and social status, which were vastly different from Juan's, even if Juan had been unmarried, Eva could only be referred to as his mistress. Eva was acutely aware of her situation. Upon meeting Juan, her ambition was not to become the wife of a military officer, but rather to leverage Juan's position and connections to advance her career. She even entertained thoughts of landing a film role now that she had met him. However, Eva's dream of acting in films ultimately did not come to fruition. Nonetheless, as Juan's influence grew within various labor unions, Eva was elected naturally as the president of the radio stations union. This gave her more influence and a stronger voice at the radio station. Given a new time slot, Eva used her platform to passionately support Colonel Juan Perón through broadcasts, narrating his heroic deeds and praising his tireless efforts for the working class. During this time, Eva also broached the topic of marriage with Juan. While Juan understood that Eva was indispensable to him and someone he could trust completely, especially as his right-hand woman, he evaded the sensitive issue of marriage. Eva felt that relying on Juan was less reliable than relying on herself, prompting her to redouble her efforts in her work. In 1945, there was a dramatic turn of events. Juan Perón was imprisoned by the opposition, prompting the United Officers Group to organize labor union workers to take to the streets, demanding Juan Perón's release. Meanwhile, Eva reacted like an enraged beast. She passionately spoke on the radio, mobilizing more workers to join the demonstration in support of Colonel Juan Perón. Under immense public pressure, Juan Perón was released after only 8 days. Sensing the popular support upon his release, Juan Perón realized the time was ripe. With a decisive gesture, he set his sights on the Argentine presidency. Knowing that a president must have a first lady, and deeply moved by Eva's sincerity and courage while he was in prison, Juan married Eva just 5 days after his release, making her officially Mrs. Perón. In 1945, Juan Perón was successfully elected as the President of Argentina, and Eva became the First Lady at the age of 26. In just 10 years, Eva had transformed from a small-town girl to the First Lady of Argentina. Upon assuming this role, she felt a strong sense of mission, as if a higher power had placed her in this seemingly unattainable position to allow her to reshape Argentina. She had ambition, and she could match it. In a short period, she established the Eva Perón Foundation and formed her private cabinet, often working 16 hours a day. Her work could be summed up in one phrase: distributing money to the poor. She met with people seeking aid in long lines, and when coal miners demanded a 30% wage increase, she immediately announced a 50% increase. She also approved pension increases for retirees. In just a few years, the foundation built nearly 5,000 schools, hundreds of thousands of welfare apartments, and countless hospitals and orphanages. Eva's efficiency was remarkable. She always found simple and quick solutions to problems without any delays. Despite not holding an official position, she seemed to accomplish more than her husband. Over the years, she became a figure of reverence among the poor in Argentina, almost like a reincarnation of the Virgin Mary, with people believing that meeting her would change their fortunes. Of course, there were some humorous incidents as well. A railway worker told her he was getting married and asked for a house, which she granted. The following year, he asked for another house, and she granted that too. When he asked for a third house the year after that, an investigation revealed that he had 3 wives. Furious, Eva confiscated all his houses. So the question arises, where did the Perón's money come from? The accounts of the Eva Perón Foundation were never fully audited, and the funds were likely extorted from major companies and capitalists, with a significant portion ending up in the Perón's private coffers. Although Eva was a workaholic, she also indulged in a lavish personal lifestyle. At her peak, she could change outfits up to 20 times a day, with her beautician, hairdresser, and manicurist arriving at her reception room every morning. She had a passion for furs and European luxury clothing, never seeing any conflict between this lifestyle and her work of redistributing wealth. The people who adored her never questioned why their beloved First Lady always dressed so opulently. Another trump card Eva used to win the hearts of the people was her speeches. Perhaps honed during her time working in radio, Eva's speeches became increasingly incendiary and persuasive. Tirelessly, she traveled across the country, mingling with the masses, leaving her mark and voice in various squares and streets. Over the years, there was a subtle shift in the dynamic between Juan and Eva. When Juan Perón was first elected, Eva was just his young wife and follower. However, by the end of Juan Perón's first term, the popularity of Mrs. Perón had even surpassed that of President Perón himself. In August 1951, Juan and Eva rallied for the second presidential election in a square, where tens of thousands of people flooded in, chanting "Vice President, Vice President." It was a pre-arranged celebration, but Eva's inner feelings matched the fervor of the crowd. If fate had favored her once more, Eva could have become Argentina's first female vice president or even its first female president. However, at that time, people did not yet know that Eva was already a candle burning at both ends. The mystery of whether Eva knew about her advanced uterine cancer and when she might have known remains unresolved. Later generations speculate that Juan likely began hiding this news from her early on. The pelvic pain and vaginal bleeding caused by the disease tortured Eva continuously, leading to extreme emotional instability and outbursts of anger, even directed at Juan himself. Perhaps she also foresaw her fate, pushing herself to work relentlessly, almost without rest. During Juan's re-election campaign for the presidency, Eva, despite her illness, remained an indispensable pillar of support. Dragging her ailing body, on October 17, 1951, she delivered a passionate speech to a massive crowd of labourists at the Plaza de Mayo in Buenos Aires. This day was later named Loyalty Day by Eva herself. In her speech, she fervently declared, "Every year on October 17th, I will come to meet you, let us fight together for Perón, victory will be ours." This commitment may have been why Juan kept her cancer a secret. Her collapse could have jeopardized his political future. In November 1951, Juan Perón was successfully re-elected as President of Argentina. On June 4, 1952, Eva appeared in public for the last time during his inauguration. By then, her cheeks were sunken, and she was as thin as paper. Doctors had administered large amounts of painkillers and used a plaster brace to help her stand barely. From the balcony, Eva waved a white handkerchief to the people, bidding them farewell. On July 26, 1952, Eva succumbed to the torment of illness and passed away at the age of 33. On the day of Eva's funeral, millions of citizens of Buenos Aires flooded the streets to mourn their spiritual leader of Argentina. The resulting chaos led to 8 deaths and over 2,000 injuries requiring hospitalization. Juan Perón deeply understood Eva's significance to his regime. The day after her death, he brought in a renowned anatomist from Spain to embalm Eva's body and planned to construct a memorial museum specifically to house her preserved remains for public viewing. However, before this memorial could be completed, Juan Perón's regime collapsed just over 2 years after Eva's death. Juan fled into exile in Europe, and in the haste of departure, Eva's body was left unattended. It remained untouched for 16 years until finally being dealt with. In 1971, Juan Perón, in exile in Madrid, Spain, received sudden news that Eva's body had long been removed from Argentina and was now buried in a common cemetery in Milan, Italy. Juan used his connections to have Eva's remains transported from Milan to his apartment in Madrid. The body had suffered some damage during the 16 years it was unattended, and what happened during this period remains a mystery. By this time, Juan Perón had remarried for a 3rd time to Isabel, a former dancer. They kept Eva's body in the dining room of their home, where Isabel unabashedly styled Eva's hair and dressed her daily as if these rituals could channel the spirit of the former Mrs. Perón. The current Mrs. Perón was filled with desire, dreaming of returning to Argentina to revive the splendor of the Perón era. The political turmoil in Argentina presented an opportunity that Juan Perón seized upon. In 1973, the Perón couple returned to the country and swiftly captured the positions of president and vice president. The vice presidency that Eva had longed for was effortlessly obtained by Isabel. She emulated Eva in every way, even adopting Eva's iconic hairstyle from years past. However, the new Mrs. Perón lacked Eva's fierceness, charisma, and executive abilities. Yet, she had a touch of luck that Eva did not possess. 2 years into her third presidential term, Juan Perón passed away suddenly due to a heart attack. By law, Isabel, who held the position of vice president, was elevated to the presidency. She thus became Argentina's first female president in history. After Isabel assumed office, she promptly ordered Eva's remains to be brought back to Argentina, finally allowing Eva to rest in her homeland. However, Argentina could not accommodate two Mrs. Peróns simultaneously, and shortly after Eva's remains returned, Isabel's presidency was overthrown in a coup. Fortunately, this new government treated Eva's remains with respect, burying her in her family's cemetery and fortifying her grave to prevent any future incidents. In 1976, 2 years later, Andrew Lloyd Webber's song Don't Cry for Me Argentina was released, followed by the opera Evita. As if destined, this Argentine legend would once again enter people's lives in a different form. Her story, it seems, will never fade away.